So today we have with us Seth McDonough for this episode of a conversation with a local author. Writers in the Mist, hopefully we'll do many of these, but this is our first inaugural conversation with one of the best speakers that I know. I know him through the Off the Page Writers group, where there's a lot of beautiful, colorful individuals, all of whom should be writing books. And Seth is one brave soul who delves into the social etiquette of our society. So I have lots of questions about that. Also, his new book about narcissism, both How to Cure Yourself of Narcissism, as explains in the back of the book. How to Cure Yourself of Narcissism teaches you practical ways to pretend to be concerned with the petty needs of your fellow citizens so you can more easily live among them. So perhaps you're not curing yourself of narcissism, but you're hiding your narcissism as best as you can. Now, Seth, in the back of the book, you say both that it is categorized as humorous and also as self-help. Are you both?
Yes, well, I'm just trying to maximize my audience. So it is meant for narcissists if you are a narcissist, because it will give you some ideas on how to hide it. But actually, the majority of the audience is actually for those who suffer at the hands and foibles of narcissists and get to tease and laugh at those narcissists, but don't tell the narcissists.
So is there actual benefit of it to individuals, or is it just a good laugh for everyone?
Well, I wrote it to be catharsis in the sense that in the tradition of, a Jane Austen or a Jerry Seinfeld, who tease the social foibles of those around us. And for me as an audience member, I always felt better about those irritating people because I don't have the courage to stand up to them in person. So just being able to laugh at them made me feel better. So it's meant to sort of give you that catharsis. However, amazingly enough, a few of the people who have read it have told me very occasionally they spot something in themselves in there and they've said, your advice on what to do is actually kind of helpful. So I kind of am excited about that inadvertently it may actually be for the narcissist who stumbles upon it sincerely helpful.
Excellent. Just to clarify, for legal purposes, you are not a doctor, correct?
My mom says I could have been a doctor. Does that answer your question?
Well, do you have any education in this field, or is this more of observations that you yourself have made?
I have education in the sense that I worked in the mental health field for a long time. Oh. And so not so much the people who were suffering from mental illness, but coworkers are all people of foibles. I also have education from going to university. And so classmates are people of foibles. I'm a member of a family, so family members are people of foibles. I'm part of a writers group, so those people can be foibilistic. So I think, in a sense, I think anybody could have written this book because we all are surrounded by people who can do irritating things. But the trick is whether you have siblings who can provide brilliant graphic design to get funnier.
Well, speaking of siblings, why this book? Like, why did you choose narcissism? Are you surrounded by narcissisms or narcissistic people, or are you yourself hiding the fact that you're a narcissist? Or
I see. Thank you. Well, I mean, it's not narcissism if it's true that you're the best. So that's good common sense, to steal from the movie Spanglish. Narcissism is sort of a catch-all term for this book, in my opinion. It's not really teasing people who are in love with themselves, as the book argues. That's kind of harmless. People who have a big ego, they can just be fun to hang out with. It's more when people are thoughtless and inconsiderate, so their self-love gets in the way of them stopping themselves from budging in line and so on. So narcissism is a catch-all for inconsiderate behavior, which, yes, I do feel we are surrounded by. I mean, I think most people in general are nice, but it just takes a few irritating people to ruin when you're at a movie who are yakking away. They make the whole movie not as much fun.
I see. In that sense, there's a lot of really great stories in your book. Some of them are completely over the top. Like when I read them, I'm like, that couldn't have happened. That's not possible. Are they true stories? Like you have one story where you're cycling and people are trying to heckling you for being a cyclist, which happens often in
Ah,
Vancouver. And your revenge didn't go quite as planned. Was that a true story?
it's 100% true, and I wish it weren't, because that one I did not do as well as I'd hoped. What happened there was, as any cyclist knows, I think as any cyclist knows, maybe it's just for me, but often when you're cycling around, a vehicle will pass by and they will suddenly yell out something incomprehensible at you. "Arr!" is what it sounds like. So it sounds like a drunk dog barking at you. And so in this case, a group of teenagers performed this gesture. And I'd always wanted to tell these drunken dogs that I can't hear them. I don't make out their very, I'm sure, witty remarks. So in this case, the teenagers actually stopped at a red light just ahead of me. So I decided to give them a taste of their own heckling. So I zoomed up beside them and yelled, "Woo!" Fortunately, then I realized that there was a red light and I was going at quite the clip. So I had to swerve into the traffic lane in a perpendicular fashion and nearly collapsed onto the road. Tragically, the teenagers spotted this and then managed to point at me and heckle me in a way that I actually understood this time. So I lost that one. But nevertheless, I want to give catharsis to all the rest of the cyclists who have ever been heckled, if there are such people.
Yeah, there's a lot of us. If you ride a bike in Vancouver, you're going to get heckled, right?
Okay, so it's not just me. That makes me feel a little better.
It's not just you. You often mention like little things. Like I think we live in a society where there is a lot of, I guess, self-absorption. Us worrying about us. And you mentioned, like in your book, you have a nice little story about even the etiquette of walking on a sidewalk. Would you possibly be able to read that to us?
Oh, certainly. I may have prepared, in fact. Let me see here. Is it on page 191 by any chance?
I believe it is.
From How to Cure Yourself of Narcissism, chapter 13's Moving Around You. This is a little passage titled Little Gods. It has come to my attention that little kids and their parents surpass even young punks when it comes to feeling possessive of the sidewalks. On numerous occasions, I have been walking on the sidewalk in the direction of some little kids and their owners, and in many such cases, I have found that neither the kids nor their accompanying parentage were interested in making any effort to share the sidewalk. I can forgive the children for their lack of social sidewalk graces, since apparently they have been worshipped as rulers of the planet since the moment they were unveiled, but I find it disturbing that their parents seem to be so impressed with their mini-me's that they think nothing of bumping others out of their way. In particular, when I walk up the hill to my bus stop, I often encounter a clump of kids and their parents reserving all lanes of the sidewalk, thus forcing me to go around them in order to maintain enough speed to catch my bus. In such a circumstance, I have two choices when veering off the sidewalk. The first is going left and treading on someone's lawn, and so I usually choose the second, and I move on to the neighborhood road to pass the clog obstructing my journey. One day, as I was speeding my way to my bus, a family merged suddenly onto the sidewalk immediately in front of me without signaling. As always, I prepared to veer onto the road so as to maintain my bus catching speed. But unfortunately, there was a car parked on this road beside me, and thus blocking my access to a non-lawn-based fast lane. I was in a hurry though, so I sheepishly stepped off onto someone's nicely manicured greenery and sped ahead. However, as I passed that self-absorbed family of four plus stroller, a conscience-cleaning breeze came over me. It was their lawn that I had stomped upon in order to get past them. All was right with the world. From Seth MacDonald's How to Cure Yourself of Narcissism.
And how to get your revenge.
Yeah. In that case, I won the revenge battle, just not intentionally.
True. You have many examples, like you were saying. Narcissism has many inclinations, and I have to admit, as I was reading the book, for the most part, I was like, yeah, this is not me. He's not speaking to me, and this is funny. But on occasion you speak to music snobs, uh,
Ah,
which I'm not going to call myself a narcissist, but I definitely am a music snob.
yes.
Even as a parent, I feel it's my responsibility to make sure my children only listen to rock and jazz, the only two, the only two music forms that should be listened to. And I appreciated your advice. And so I guess I'm wondering though, do we all see ourselves in certain aspects of being narcissists? Do we all have it as, is it part of our society now to be self-absorbed and true to our beliefs of what is right?
Hmm. Well, I tend to think like everybody has a few of these foibles. I don't think everyone is narcissistic. I mean, you are, but not everyone for sure. I mean, as I argue in the book, it's more to me not about whether you sort of feel superior in certain ways. I certainly feel superior in my sitcom taste. If someone mentions the wrong sitcom, I can't help but roll my eyes. Obviously, your Seinfelds and your Frasers are the top dogs there. But it's about, to me, how you handle that superior opinion. If you put others down, if you sort of are mean-spirited in your superiority more than if you sort of self-aggrandize yourself internally. And as I say, if you have like I give an example in the book, the difference between saying, I'm a really good salesman at my company versus I'm the best salesperson in the company. The former is just you bragging, and if you want to brag, people might sort of smirk at you, but there's no victim there. Whereas if you're sort of putting others down in the process, then that's a little more irritating, in my humble opinion.
In your humble opinion. Um,
Yes.
uh, Speaking directly to the book, you have a very unique way of sort of telling the story or telling the book, and the fact that it's sort of a lecture or a conversation between two parties. I believe to be yourself and this fictional character, the ADHU. Who is the ADHU?
Yes, that is, the book is called How to Cure Yourself of Narcissism, just because I thought that was a catchy title. But the character in the book isn't actually narcissistic so much as attention obsessed. So ADHD is a acronym for attention deserving, hyperactive, mistreated ego. So a person who's always focusing on themselves and feeling that they should get first dibs on whatever is happening, whether it be the lineup for the bus or the ability to speak at a microphone. So that is the character I'm teasing. And then the dialogue, I just find it more catchy. My education is in philosophy, and I met this guy there named Socrates. And so I really enjoyed his sort of dialogues, they call them. Apparently he was good at them. And so I enjoy sort of making a point first by babbling about it in making an argument. Hey, maybe if we did this instead of that, it would be more effective. And then I give a dialogue to illustrate it. A good way of doing it, in my opinion, and a slightly more irritating way of doing it. And I find that's a neat way to be compelling.
I believe on Amazon you say that you were a high school mate of Jane Austen. Also, you seem to have very good classmates.
Yes. Yeah, it's awkward because she had a bit of a crush on me back then, and I was sort of the muse for her works. I was one of, I think her nickname for me was Darcy. I don't know where that comes in, but yeah, I love Jane Austen. I think her villains are wonderful in that she captures characters that still exist today. You know, you think of Emma and the hypochondriac father, and he's a delightful fellow. He just happens to be constantly in fear. It's so fun to be able to chuckle at these characters, and it's not mean-spirited, and that's the sort of aim that I have for my book, is to playfully tease, so that if you do recognize yourself in the book, it's just teasing you. It's not saying you're bad. It's just teasing the fact that, oh, you know, that might come across in this way in this particular case. And I think Jane was the master of that.
This question is going to segue perfectly into what you just said. Are you a narcissist?
Well, it depends who you ask. My family might indicate that when I won a ping pong tournament on a cruise ship, that I labeled myself the King Kong of ping pong. So that's just, again, good common sense. So no.
Not that you'll admit to, at least, right?
No, yes, thank you.
So is this book basically tips and tricks that you yourself have learned in order to adapt to society, in order not to get seen as a narcissist?
Well, I mean, that's the sort of deceit of the book, is pretending that I'm talking to actual narcissists. So that's because I imagined a narcissist would think, why would I want to cure yourself of narcissism? And so my argument to them is, well, because this world is becoming more everyone focused, so maybe to get along, you should fake it. But then in the actual book, what I do is I try to sincerely give the case for why certain behaviors are annoying and why one might consider removing them. And again, my hope is that for the non-narcissist reader, it'll feel good to finally hear these items said to the people that annoy them. Because I'm a bit of a coward myself, so I rarely say such things to people. I think of Larry David and, you know, his show Curb Your Enthusiasm. He says Larry David and Larry David are different in the sense that the one in the show says everything that the one who's not in the show is thinking. And so this book is kind of like that, saying the things that I think a lot of us wish we could say to the narcissist, trying to genuinely persuade them, but at the same time for the reader to allow them to enjoy having those things said. Does that make any sense?
It makes complete sense.
Yes.
Well, on that note then, do you find that narcissism is on the rise? It's things like social media where every individual gets to be a Larry David and take their picture on a regular basis and post it on Instagram, and all of a sudden people's opinions are important on Twitter. Like, I don't care what they have to say.
Right.
So why do we as a society care if this nobody all of a sudden has a voice? Is that narcissistic? Like, are we all narcissists now? And because of social media, you know?
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, I'm wary of sort of doing the generation comparison because, you know, when you complain about language changing, you go back to the 1940s and they were complaining about it changing and so on. So I imagine our parents and their parents thought that we were self-absorbed and so on. But the social media argument is a good one, that might be something distinct. This idea that your opinion matters. I remember finding that annoying in elementary school when we were told that everybody's opinion is valid, and okay, so the flat earthers' opinion is equally valid.
Yeah.
So it's always been there maybe, but it does seem like with social media, this notion that because you have an opinion that you must get it out, or because you have a photo of the meal you've just eaten, then you must get it out. Could be negative. At the same time, maybe it means it's becoming more democratized, that it's not just the superstars who get to have attention, and maybe people who are interested in culinary options enjoy seeing these food pictures, even if I'm running away. So I'm wary to say for sure, but I'm suspicious that you're right.
Do you do that? Like, are you big on social media? Do you take pictures of your food?
No, first of all, I'm what we call a food prude. I don't like looking at it so much as tasting it. That's why your mouth and your eyes are parallel to each other, so you can't see yourself eating. So I'm not interested in that. In terms of social media, it's funny, as you can see, I'm quite verbose, babble, babble, babble. But when on social media, it takes me an hour to write one of those 140 character posts. I guess because the shorter it is, the more it feels like every syllable has to be perfect. So no, I'm not skilled at social media, and I don't mean that as a boast. I admire those who are able to be witty and continually make interesting remarks. I'm just not one this time.
Well, your book's very witty, and you're mentioning like one line, and you wrote 400 and odd pages.
Yes.
So that couldn't have been an easy feat either.
Right.
I was wondering, I personally, even though I haven't dated in a long, long time, very much enjoyed the dating portion of it.
Thank you.
Seeing how maybe through the generations now, it's been so long, that dating has changed with all this, new means of dating and ways of meeting people. Did you relish that, writing that section? Like, I know you're very happily partnered right now.
Yes. She's right
She can
there.
probably overhear us right now. And I met her, and definitely she's not a narcissist. But did you pull some of your true stories from dating her?
Oh, interestingly enough, the opposite, because one of my complaints about online dating, which is how we met, was, and I don't know what it's like for ladies dating gents, but for some reason, the ladies that I encountered online, and this was a few years ago now, but they seemed to think it was sort of a job interview, and so they felt that they only could boast online. So it would be things like smart, witty, really athletic. It was all boast. And so my wife was the only person I saw on there that said something that was at all self-deprecating. And so I thought, okay, that's interesting. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. I forgot about that she was the anti-ego-based dater. But certainly online, it's a little strange how, whereas in the real world, some of these captions one would say about oneself, you would never go into a room and say, hi, smart, witty person arriving. But for some reason, when you're introducing yourself on online dating, that's how people think they should go. Did you find that?
Did I find
Yeah, did you do online dating?
No, I'm
No.
before that time.
Okay, in the real world, when you go on a date with someone, do you arrive and they announce their qualities right off the bat?
No, they don't.
Okay, except you probably did, but most.
I thought it was pretty obvious.
True.
Do you have any regrets of all these stories that you've told? Like maybe have you given too much of your soul to this book?
Yeah, I think that's the case probably with any author. I know Christopher Hitchens was saying when he was writing and he had terminal cancer, not to get sad here, but he was saying there was something freeing about that because he would be able to write as though he wouldn't be able to read people's reactions. And so, yeah, there's a few parts that make me a little sheepish. There's a chapter on space hogging on buses, which I agree with. And I feel like I included it partly because I thought I liked how I wrote it. But the joke I went with, I thought was a little obvious. And I'm a prude, as we've talked about. And so it's a little less prudy than I would have liked. So I regret that a bit, but I just liked so much how it was written that I couldn't help myself.
Fair enough. I have one question for you that I didn't want to give you advanced timing.
Okay. All right.
All right. So, as you may know, President hopeful Joe Biden will soon be doing debates against perhaps the largest narcissist of our generation. If Joe's team went online and found your book and said, hey, we got to call Seth, he's obviously an expert in this field, what advice would you give Joe Biden?
That's interesting. First of all, I didn't realize you were going to be debating Joe Biden. That's the last Erik is narcissist joke. Okay, so, gosh, yeah, I do have a section on the debate in the book. And I guess, a big thing for me in general is if you can take your own ego out of a debate, then it helps to demonstrate where the other person's ego may be clouding their judgment. And so avoiding taking any shots personally, I think is a good way to go. If someone's insulting you, maybe even to laugh at it, but then to say, okay, fair enough. That's a nice name that you've called me, but can we get back to the topic at hand? And also just trying to avoid being too insulting back is my suggestion, because then I think you, to people who you're trying to convince of an argument, they won't be as persuaded. People who are already on your side might be persuaded, but if you're trying to convince people who are on the opposing side, insulting their favorite person is less likely to be persuasive. So I think just trying to stay calm and focus on the arguments and just smile and not take things personally and not let your own ego get in the way. This is from someone who hates confrontation myself. And if I were in a debate with anybody, I would probably be tearing up, which is why you put me as the advisor, not member of debate.
That's great. So I know your books or your book is selling on Amazon right now. If people, I know it's COVID and everything like that, so times are different. But if people wanted a signed copy, or if they had any questions for you directly, how could people contact you?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Probably the best way it would be at my Facebook page, which is Seth McDonough author. I'm sure we'll put it on the screen. Or if you want something really easy, just sethblogs.com. You could put a comment, but the Facebook is a better way to actually have a conversation with me, I would say. Or contact you, because you're my PR advisor.
Apparently I am now.
You've said it.
Well, that concludes this first interview. Thanks, Seth. You were a great first guest. It was an honor having you on today. Writers in the Mist will be doing a children's literature event coming up with the Port Moody Library in September, so I'm happy to be putting that together right now. But for now, again, thank you very much for being on the show today, Seth.
Thank you, Eric. It was great, and I pity the person who has to follow us.
Poor Jerry.